tournament poker. So it was an awesome experience and something I'll never forget probably. Like, it's life-changing, really.
Definitely is life-changing. We'll talk about, since you have actually won the Aussie Millions main event in 2017, so it's literally 2 years pretty much down the track. Since then, how has your life actually changed in the fact that, you won the main event, you obviously played in bigger stake poker tournaments. So to tell the viewers, what kind of events have you played in, where have you been invited to, and how's your overall experience of poker actually changed? Because I can imagine going from pub poker to high stakes poker is two different, it's the same game, but the end result means a lot more. So just elaborate on that, and how's it all changed for you in the last 2 years? And where have you played?
Okay, so I've played in New Zealand 4 times, I think, since I won. Twice in Auckland and twice in Christchurch. Last year they had the WPT event in Auckland, which was a fantastically run event. I think they had 600 or 700 entries into the main event, which is absolutely massive. I think it was a 2K buy-in. So, it's a really well-run tournament. The one in Christchurch is also really well-run. The New Zealand Poker Champs, I believe. The casino there really looks after the players. Very, very player-orientated. It makes the experience really enjoyable as well. I mean, last year I didn't cash in New Zealand in the tournaments, but I had a fantastic time. I can't speak highly enough of the casinos over there and how they look after their players. What else has changed for me? Now I'm playing a bit more bigger buy-in tournaments. So before Aussie Millions, the biggest tournament I've ever played was a $2,200 Australian dollars buy-in, and that was a long time ago. So I was predominantly a cash player before that. Low stakes. I was low stakes cash. Like 1-3, sometimes 2-5. I was never a big buy-in or big player before. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a big player now, but I just play a little bit bigger buy-in tournaments. I play a few 2Ks in a year. I play one 10K, which is the Aussie Millions generally. And my banco allows me to do that, which is nice.
Okay. That's fantastic. That's a great answer. So, so you played in New Zealand. You played obviously in the recent Aussie Millions. Just tell the viewers, how'd you actually go? Well, first of all, 2018. So you would have been. And I was actually wondering, how does that all work? As far as defending your title, do you automatically get to defend your seat? Do Crown give you a seat, or how does that all that type of thing, or do you have to start again and just grind your way through to another main event?
Yeah, so you do have to. Crown do not give you a free seat for future years, unfortunately. But I think
that's the dream.
Yeah, that would be the dream. The Crown used to do something like that. I think it was in 2010 where they ended it. I think Tyron Cross. I think he was the last player that to have got that. What would you call it? Privilege, I suppose. That Crown gives him a free.
What, 2009?
I think it's 2010.
2010.
I'm not sure. It was a while back, and he's the last player to have got free entry to successive, or to future Aussie Millions events, which ends up to be a lot of freaking money. I think it will work out to be because he was young. He was 20 years old when he was 21 when he won. So he plays for another 40 years. That's over $400,000 worth of entries.
Yeah, of course.
Which is should be handy to have, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. So last year I played, and a funny story is I didn't actually pay for my entry until about 3 hours after playing, because of that miscommunication and me not knowing that I had to pay for it.
Okay.
Which is kind of annoying, but that's just part of, and I paid for it a few days later. It wasn't a big problem, but I've told this story to a few people. It's probably not widely known. So I paid for it 3 days later and settled the account, and I didn't play that great as well last year. I made a couple of mistakes. I probably would have played more satellites as well for 2018 main event if I knew I didn't have a free seat. I think I only played 4 satellites.
Okay.
Which it was this year I played a few more.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll go back in time. So So obviously we know what happened. You bought him for $130. You got to the final table. You got through the whole field. How many players were there actually that year? Just so we can, so the viewers are aware of that.
There was 724 other players.
Okay, 725 in total.
That's right.
So you literally got through the field. Your heads up. I'm sure there was plenty of other memorable hands throughout the tournament that kept you in the game, and some big hands. You probably would have turned a card that helped you, or I'm sure that happened. But really, the big hand, the hand that's been watched approximately 300,000 times on YouTube.
500,000 chips in the pot heading to the flop, a little more than that even.
Section on one check.
An interesting flop here. Vijayaram with the best hand, but Heath with the up and down straight draw.
2 bets, 400,000.
Vijayaram bets here. Heath, of course, going to continue.
Action on one checks. Action on 2.
Vijayaram now could make a straight with an 8 or a 4. Heath needs to catch a 5 or a 10 to make a straight. King would also make him the best hand. We know a 5 is going to be hard to come by, but that would certainly be a bit of an action card, though it would put
2 bets,
lots of
500,000.
straights on board. Ooh, and that is a check. Although an 8 isn't really fantastic. You river an 8 and any 10 has a higher straight. But yeah, I think having that straight draw allows him to call here, and Ben's going to need some help. Ben is all in. Heath shoved the river. He calls! It's all over! Holy moly, he wins the tournament! That's it! It's over! Wow!
The final hand, the Ben Heath. Okay, I think he was from Britain, was he?
Yeah, he's from the UK.
From the UK.
Right.
Okay, so I've done my research.
It's Brighton, I believe, in the UK.
Brighton in the UK. So a dream becomes a reality.
So I raised with pocket 5s on the button, and Ben called with king 8, which is quite standard there in that spot. And the flop comes 6, 7, 9 rainbow, which means no flush draws. I bet 400,000 into 700,000 on the flop, which is a little bit bigger sizing what most people would do. And he just called there, thought about it and called, and the turn was a 3, I believe, which completes the 4-5 straight, and he raised me there, which was an interesting spot. He hadn't really been getting out of line too much. But the pocket 5s is an interesting hand there. Like, it blocks a lot of his value hands in terms of it blocks. So pocket 5s on that flop on a 6, 7, 9, 10, 8 is this flop straight, and so is 5, 8. And they're both quite possible holdings that he can have. But because I've got pocket 5s, I cut out all those combos. I also cut out the 4-5 combos in half as well, which is the turn straight if he has that. He can have all the 2 pairs and stuff, and he can still have all the sets. He can have over pairs as well. But it seemed like a bit of a funny spot to me on the turn, and that's why I did float him on the turn there, in position. And the river, when he jams, he goes all in. It's a very polarizing bet there. When the queen comes, it's very polarizing. I was kind of afraid of him having queen 8, because that's the hand that beats me really there, and that's the hand that he's bluffing with on the turn, which gets down the river. I might have even said queen 8 a couple of times, thinking that's what was, that's what he could have.
Before you go, hold that thought. Just before you go ahead, obviously the final. So there was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 9 on the final table.
7
on the final table. Okay. So just how'd you find how he played just before you got to heads up? Like, was he aggressive? Was he sort of moderate in his play? Was he pulling bluffs? Or the psychology, what you were thinking, without giving away too much, how would you describe him as an opponent? Like, even before heads up, when it got to the final 7.
Yeah, he's a tough opponent, and he picked his spots. In my opinion, he picked his spots really well when we got down to the final 7 and final 6 and final 5 and so forth. Yeah, he's a very calculating player. he didn't get out of line very much when there was 4 or 5 players, which is understandable. And I think maybe he didn't expect me to fold. There was an earlier hand in that tournament when it was 7 players left, I think, on the final table, where I folded pocket queens and he had quad 10s, and I feel that he didn't expect me to fold that hand on the river.
Okay.
So once he knows that I'm folding in certain spots, it makes it a little bit easier for him to push back against me and be a bit aggressive. So there was also certain spots where we were heads up, where I folded certain hands to him where I think he would have expected to get value from those hands, but considering what I was holding, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And I also folded a hand, top pair, top kicker to Rossiter earlier on, just before heads up. And once he sees me making folds like that, he knows that I can fold, and so it allows him to make a little bit more of a, to go for it a little bit, pull the trigger, so to speak. If you don't know someone can fold, you generally won't try and bluff them. That's just how it is. If you know someone can fold, if you think you can make them fold, you will try the bluff every now and again. And that's, I think, might have gone through his head possibly during the final hand. I think there was a hand just before the final hand, there was one where I had like Queen 8 or something, where I was like, got a little bit crazy and stuff. So sometimes after a hand, he can sort of get a feeling that I was getting a bit crazy, so that makes him want to push back a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Just to draw the line in the sand, so to speak. Like you just can't have people running over you a little, all the time.
Yeah.
He's a great opponent, Ben. Like I played with him all of day 3, pretty much, coming up to the money bubble. The bubble burst and he was on my table, and he was a very strong player. Picks his spots very carefully.
Okay. So that brings us back to the final hand. I think we're up to the turn. Is that correct? Or we're up to the river?
I think I might have already said the river.
Yeah, that's all right. That's fine, mate. That's fine. So the river comes. Basically, you're holding a pocket pair, really, or you can potentially beat as a bluff, really. Like, you're looking down the board. It's a scary board. You got the poker world watching you. It was a live stream. I'm not sure what the views were, but I'm sure there would have been. The poker world is a small community, but a big enough community. So
I think it was 30,000 viewers on Twitch, which at the time was one of the most ever for a tournament, I think. So yeah, there was a lot of viewers, and there's a little bit of pressure, but at the same time, I felt like there's more pressure on Ben in terms of that he's a pro, and I was a nobody. So I'm not really expected to win.
No, that's right.
So yeah.
Okay, so. Well, I'll tell you what, you handled the pressure well. You probably made... It's not just the call as such, it's the moment, because if you fold that, you don't know what happens after that. I'm not sure the chip count would have been, but obviously would have evened up a little bit more, because you were the chip leader at that stage. So, and the commentators were just saying, Shurane, just call. You'll win the Aussie Millions, just call. But obviously you don't know what they're saying in the background. So, it's more of a moment. It's they're calling it a hero call, but it was to me, I've watched the hand quite a few times in the lead up to this interview, this podcast, and I just think it was an amazing, calculated. You must have had some tell. I know you're not going to go into that, but you must have had something within you that made you call, because you must have had a feeling, because that was one of the hardest calls. I don't know if I would be able to do in that spot. Very tough. And as you said, he's a pro, and he put the pressure on you, something shocking, and you stood up to the pressure. So I congratulate you on that, and one of the best poker calls of all time, just about, especially in the main event.
Cheers, man. It was, I don't know if I could make that call if I was playing online. It's one of those things that when you play live a little bit, sometimes you get a feeling, a gut feeling about how things should go, Oh, that guy's got a fish now. It's one of those things you just get a feeling sometimes, and certain players have certain tendencies, and it's like I said, I don't know if I could make that call playing online, or even if I'd played less with Ben, but because I had played a little bit with him, some things make sense and some things don't make sense, and that particular hand, there was a few things that were seen a bit odd, and I think I might have even mudded his hand, possibly, like under my breath.
You did. You did actually call the commentators at the time. I'm not sure the commentators, American commentators, doing the live stream, did say that you mumbled the hand. So when you were going through the full thought process of the actual hand, you actually did mumble it under your own breath. So that was quite impressive.
Yeah. So sometimes when that happens, sometimes if you call someone's hand, they will give off a reaction, or sometimes they won't give off a reaction, and that in itself can be a tell, I suppose. Yeah, it was a lot of money, and I didn't really want to lose that because it would have evened up the chips a lot. And if we've got even chips, he's probably the favourite to win because he's got a lot more experience in heads-up poker, and it'll allow him to open up his aggression a lot as well. Him being short-stacked against me worked in my favour a lot in terms of I can be the aggressor. It's easy for me to be the aggressor in that instance. So yeah, if the chips were evened up, we could have played out quite differently. But all's well that ends well, you know. He still played great. I was happy with what happened. It was and he's gone on to bigger and better things as well. So good on him.
Fantastic. Now, let's talk about the poker topic. Why don't you tell the viewers about some of the other passions outside of poker? Clearly, poker is a fantastic game, and we all love it. But what's some obviously fishing? I actually, when I was researching this interview, I actually noticed that you said straight after you'd won it, and all your mates, you celebrate with all your mates, was like the interviewer said to you something like, "Oh, so what's on next?" And you said, "Oh, well, I think I'm going fishing tomorrow morning." So clearly, it's definitely one of the things you enjoy doing. So tell me about your love of fishing, and what kind of fishing do you do, and what are some of the spots that you enjoy fishing at, and what kind of fish do you actually like carting out of the sea, so to speak? Or water, H2O.
Yeah, so I go fishing everywhere, like freshwater, saltwater. When I travel, if I go to Asia or New Zealand, I usually take my fishing rods with me. Even when I went to the UK a long time ago, I took my rods with me. I find it very therapeutic just to be out of nature, and catching fish is a bonus as well. I've got a small boat as well, a little kayak, so I take that out every now and again, take out friends every now and again as well for fish. Western Port Bay, Port Phillip Bay, mostly salt water, but you know, I go up to Yukon Beam occasionally with some friends, and we do the trout there when there's a trout run in like June, I think it is, around that time. Yeah, so it's just I go spearfishing occasionally as well, and like spotlighting, like wading in the water with the little hand spear. Yeah, everything, calamari fishing, you name it.
So you're a keen fisherman. Fair to say.
Yeah. I'm a very keen fisherman. Definitely say since I was quite young, you know, like.
Yep.
I like being near the ocean, swimming and all that sort of stuff.
Fantastic, outdoorsy.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Tell me, how once you did make that call, what was that? What night was it actually on? Was it a Sunday night?
I believe it was a Sunday night, Monday morning.
Sunday night, Monday morning.
Yeah.
How did you and the boys party after you won 1.6 million?
There was a lot of drinking involved. I don't think we actually went out those next few days. I catch up with a few drinks every now and again with some of the guys from overseas when they come here, just a few beers and such, but nothing too out of hand really. Nothing too out of hand. I don't know if, like when I won, there was no players party. I don't know if they have any players, like a formal players party anymore. Back in the day, they did win the days with Gus and all the Full Tilt pros.
Full Tilt poker.
Yeah,
the original superstars. Yeah.
Yeah, that was when. There were more parties and stuff like that. They still have. I mean, so I went to the WPT players party in Auckland last year. That was pretty good. That was a really well run event. You know, WPT do a really good job there with the players as well, looking after them, putting on a really good show. You know. That was in Sky City Casino in Auckland.
Tell me about the events over in New Zealand and how they treated you, and how do they compare to the Aussie Millions? And just elaborate on that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so poker in New Zealand's growing, like it is in Australia and around the rest of the world. I went there for the first time to play poker anyway. I've been to New Zealand previously, but just to play poker I went in 2017, I think in like April or May possibly. And then I went again in September, I think, of the same year, August, September. Both those events that I went to that first year, I went again in 2018, and those events have grown exponentially,
Of course, yeah.
which is fantastic. You know, it means bigger fields, people are having a really great time. The last event that I went to, was it the WP? Not the last one, but the WPT Auckland event that I went to at Sky City Casino. It's a fantastic event. Like I said, they had 630 or almost 700 entries in the main event, and it was a fantastic festival.
What was the actual prize money? So 650 odd. Must have been a big prize.
I think
pool.
first place was like 200,000 or 250,000.
Okay.
Maybe.
So it's fairly.
Yeah. There was a high roller event there as well. Joe Hashton was there as well, plus a few other well-known poker superstars. So it was a really good atmosphere, to be honest. They had the players' party. It's very well run. I mean, there was a few little, deal mistakes and stuff like that. But considering that they hadn't run such a big event, in quite a long time, it was very, very smooth, all things considered. The accommodation's awesome as well. Sky City Casino is awesome. Yeah, they really look after you there. Really, really look after you. The food on the floor, like just on the main gaming floor, like just the basic nibbles and stuff, is really good food. Christchurch Casino as well. They run a fantastic tournament, which is the New Zealand Poker Champs, which is in September, I believe, every year.
Yep.
They're very player focused as well. The casino manager, I think his name's Warren J. Wiley, I believe. He really looks after players. Because a lot of casinos don't prioritise poker. They prefer to prioritise more of the house games like blackjack and baccarat and roulette and what have you. But
all the games that favour the house.
That's exactly right. They take a lot more from those games than say poker. So it can be hard sometimes for poker managers or poker supervisors to further poker in the casino, but over there they've done a really good job. They've made the areas bigger. Like for instance in Auckland. So when they're running the tournament series there, they'll be running that in a separate area, but they'll still have a lot of cash tables going as well. So there's always something to do while you're there. It's not a thing of like you bust out of a tournament or you have to go home. No, you can go play some cash. You can rail your friends there. There's lots to do there. And also there's a lot of good life EV. There's really good food in New Zealand. Really good food.
Oh yeah.
Excellent seafood if you're into that. Meat. There's a lot to see as well. Even just in Auckland, just walking down around to the harbour. There's beautiful yachts.
Sky City, isn't it?
Sky City Casino, yeah.
I've been to the South Island, not the North Island. So I did all Lake Wanaka and all the adventure stuff.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to do there. I went snowboarding, I think in 2017, I think it was.
Beautiful. That would have been an experience.
Yeah, it was my first time ever. So I've been to the snow a few times, but never, done any skiing or snowboarding, and that was an awesome experience. Yeah, beautiful mountains there. Really, really do look after you. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I've, like your dad, David,
Yep.
cashed in the
2014.
So 5 years ago.
70k,
15 to 70,000. And I didn't know your dad very well at that particular time, but I knew he was your dad, and so but that brings a bit of an association together in terms of knowing somebody that does really well.
Yeah.
Since then I've played with him quite a few times and spoken to him quite a bit, but back then I'd still just knowing that he was your dad and that he'd cash in the Aussie Millions brings some like makes it much more tangible for someone like me. Your dad, along with some other people as well. There was another friend of mine who passed away late last year. Her name is Angela Italiano. She was quite.
I know Ange. I knew Dom and Ange Italiano quite well. Very well known at the Furland Club and all around the poker scenes of Melbourne.
Yeah, they're very well respected. Both of them, in the poker community and within their own respective communities. And Ange cashed. I remember.
What was that? The WSOP APAC series, yeah.
APAC. Well, the funny thing is, I think that was in 2014 when she final tabled that event, and I didn't actually find out about it until 2016. It must have been about 2 months before I won the main.
Yeah.
I caught up with her at Oakley pub somewhere, and Dom was there as well. We were having a chat, and then we were having a cigarette, and then she mentioned that she'd final tabled, and at that particular time I wasn't following a lot of live poker and watching a lot of streams and videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when she told me, I went home straight away, went on YouTube, watched it.
She finished 8th by memory, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was 8th, or I can't remember
It
exactly.
was over 100k, it was about 108,000.
Yeah, it was a nice score, and at that particular point, it was one of the biggest scores of someone that I'd known, And when someone like that does something, again, it makes it much more tangible, and it makes it a lot more realistic that things can be done when you know people that can do that, It's stories like that which, in a way, gave me a lot of confidence in the main.
Yeah.
Because it can be hard sometimes if you haven't had many big scores and you're playing against big pros. Sometimes it can be hard to have the confidence or the self-belief to say, I can beat these guys.
Yeah, psychology, because they think they can bully up on so-called amateurs or players of our, not to say that, but at the end of the day, as you say, they're only human beings. But they've probably got more experience, and that's what it really just comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's experience, and there's a bit of psychology involved as well, but experience plays a big role. Experience in high pressure situations, I suppose, would be the easiest way to put it. And some people, buckle under pressure easier than others, So that's just part of the game. And sometimes people play outside their bankroll as well, which makes it a bit, So someone that's got $1 million and they're playing a 10k, it's a lot easier for them to bluff than someone that's playing, that's on a limited bankroll playing a 10k.
Playing standard poker, playing textbook poker.
And, you grind, turn $20 or $50 into $1,000 or $2,000, and then bang, in 3 hands it can be gone. Do you know what I mean? Because you're only playing with, 1 big buy-in or 2 buy-ins sometimes.
And that's literally grinding, knowing that you're coming to the end of your. If your bankroll's running low, you start making probably worse decisions than you would have otherwise too. Yeah.
Well, it's also variant as well. So sometimes, say if you're playing on a $50 bankroll, you might play say 10 cent, 20 cents, which is $20 buy-in. So you'll have 2.5 buy-ins with $50. Say for instance. Now, if you play that $20, that's actually bad bankroll management, playing with 2.5 buy-ins. If you've only got $50 in your account, you should really be playing like 2 cents, 5 cents or something.
But it's all in relativity.
Yeah, it's all relativity. So if you're playing on with 2.5 buy-ins, sometimes you'll turn that $20 into say $300. But instead of playing that same stakes, you'll take that $300 and then move up to another table and then turn that $300, turn that $300 into $1,000, and then do that a couple of times. You can turn that into $2,000. But then if you just get a couple of bad beats, you only have to run kings into aces twice, and you don't hit your king, you lose your whole bankroll. And some people have done really well like that, being very aggressive with their bankroll. But generally speaking, it doesn't work out. It works out very well for a short amount of time, but then you go busto. But that's poker, and now I've put aside, I think I put aside about 140 or 150,000 of that 1.6 to play, and it's gone up and down during that time.
So that's your bankroll. That's what you were happy to lose. Obviously, poker is gambling essentially. Hopefully you win. That's what we all try to do. But so you put that. That's really interesting. You say that's really good money management, because I've heard some horror stories. I'll elaborate. People win, the lottery in America and they're broke 5 years later. I mean, you've got to ask yourself, who was their money manager? Who was their tax agent? Do you understand what I'm saying? That's, money that we dream of, that's why we grind every day, because one day we hope to just have a house or whatever we want to do and just live a simple life. And people to go broke. So to me, that sounds like a really good money management strategy, that you put aside that 150,000. And you're happy to lose it, and then you've got that limit, you know what I mean? It's all in perspective. You've kept it perspective, and I'm sure you've probably set yourself up in other areas of life.
Yeah, that's right. I've invested some money and done a few other things. I'm 35 now. I was 33 when I won. I've been around casinos since I was about 19. Probably quite intensively from the ages of 19 to about 23. Played a lot of the table games and house games before I started poker. So being in that environment and for such a long time, stories of people that have amassed a great fortune or reasonable fortune and then lost it in the pits it's a dime a dozen. Those stories are so common. It's not they're very, very common. So when you hear that a lot, and myself being, part Asian, also having within not my inner social circle, but having a social circle of knowing stories of people that have lost their fortune in houses and at the casino and on gambling, it makes you a little bit more cautious, I suppose. At my age, I often say that if I was 20 and good enough to have won the Aussie Millions, I would have, wasted it for sure.
Probably.
100%. I know for sure. I know myself that back then, as a person, I would have spent it on all sorts of, all sorts of things that would have.
All the things that you buy when you're 20 years of age. What's your psychology, and where do you sit with the opinion that poker is a sport?
So I do think that tournament poker is a sport. Cash poker less so. Maybe doesn't qualify at all. Maybe, but tournament poker. As you've experienced, it's quite grueling. There's a lot of pressure, high pressure situations and high pressure moments, and like you mentioned, one mistake and you can be out of the tournament. Your tournament life can be on the line.
It's not a good feeling when that happens.
So I do think tournament poker is a sport, and I think there's a few other people in the poker community, like Tony Hashem. I think that he's trying to promote poker as a sport as well. He's got his little poker league. Well, not really, but his poker league, trying to encourage that facet of it being a sport and not just gambling, because it can be, obviously it is a form of some form of gambling, but there's a lot of psychology and there's a lot of other elements involved.
As you say, it's it can be seen as a sport. It can also be seen as a, as I said, problem of gambling and all that kind of thing comes into it. But if it's money management, if you think of the game as fun, which I believe you did for many years before you actually started, before you got, what are you going to call it, lucky, whatever, like in the Aussie Millions, pretty much it is what, like, you know what I'm saying? Can you elaborate on that,
Yeah, so I do think there's a lot of, once you delve into poker a little bit more, there's lots of different facets and variables and things to explore. Psychology, endurance. This isn't tournament poker anyway. There's often the blinds and stuff are going up and changing, and stack sizes are different depending on players and positions. So things are very dynamic in a sense. So you really have to be applying yourself. Every decision has so many different variables to it that it's not as. It can be as simple or as hard as you want to make it, I suppose. And that in itself can be a bit of a sport in terms of the mind games and the pitting yourself against different opponents. It's not as physical as, say, maybe a contact sport, but there's still elements which I think are like sport, which are part of sport, like endurance and endurance, paying attentiveness, I suppose, is another one. Remembering your opponents and targeting a strategy for each opponent. I think that's also very similar in other sports as well. The one thing that's different, I find, in poker to many other sports is that in poker, say for instance, if you bluff somebody and you don't show it, the other opponent, and obviously if it's not on television as well, your opponent will never know it's a bluff. They don't. So you can do that 1,000 times, and they'll never know you're bluffing. But if you say you're playing soccer with somebody, and then you're an attacker, and then you always go down the right wing and then cut in, your opponent will remember that and can develop a counter strategy for that. So that's one of the beautiful things about poker. So you can bluff your opponent, as many times as possible, and they can never know. Possibly, it's just one of those things until you get called, and then you have to develop a counter strategy for that, but so in a sense, I do believe it is a sport, tournament poker. I also think that fitness plays a massive role in tournament poker, especially the big events. It's something that I'm going to try and work on a bit more as well this year. It's hard for me to prove it. There's a lot of